Yeah. It's hard to find my full history when I seek it. When I look, I mostly get mysteries and his secrets. They wanted our magic for power and killed to keep it. But mention the source, they insist you shouldn't believe it. You were raised for power, though never told you should.
Writer's block is really interesting because I started my time writing, dreading it. And it certainly happens. But I think the first time I actually really dealt with it, the only times I really dealt with it initially, I was running away from myself as an artist. So it didn't really have the impact that I think it has for people. And then by the time I got to the point where it happened again, once I had fully embraced myself as a performing artist and realized this is what I'm working towards, I was fully entrenched in the Artist's Way, the Julia Cameron book process. And the morning pages and Artist Date is the other tenet of it, is where you take yourself on an artist date to benefit your inner child artist, which Julia Cameron describes your inner artist as like you just having a 5-year-old that never ages, that needs the attention, has ideas, and is really inquisitive constantly, and that doesn't ever change. So doing those things consistently and making a habit of doing them at the point when I was working and I was struggling to finish the first album I dropped seriously, which is Gateways. It really didn't take me long to move past it because I just retreated back into kind of, I think the bottom line for me with writer's block is fundamentals and just going back to like what basic thing can I do to get myself back moving, which in this case is just getting up and writing, not knowing what I'm gonna write. Whatever happens, because I'll be complaining about my day or the previous day, or mad about some argument that my partner and I had, or like happy that my partner did something really awesome, or but then after some consistency, I'm magically just writing lyrics and they're dope, right? And what that turned into was me figuring out things that could stimulate my process if it slowed down. So I used to go, when I first moved here, I would go to Green Lady every Sunday night and just listen to jazz and just write whatever happened. I actually met a buddy who plays with me now a lot, Erin McGrane, because he would go to Green Lady and just draw and sketch things out. But if I get stuck, I just hardball go back to my basics and stick to those until things start to change. And I don't know how long that's going to work. It's worked for a while. With imposter syndrome, so imposter syndrome, I guess, is the feeling that you don't deserve to be where you are or have the opportunity you have. So I have a couple answers to dealing with that, but I'll tell a story first. So I moved to Kansas City. I heard about Marcus Lewis, that he had just moved to Kansas City around when I moved to Kansas City. I knew he was playing with Jamaal. I was like, I want to meet this guy. I want to learn how he got here, right? I want to say the guy who told me about Marcus was Ryan Heinlein, and I didn't realize Ryan Heinlein was Ryan Heinlein. You know, I was just completely green to Kansas City and just going to jam sessions, trying to meet people and play a little bit. But Eddie Moore, so Marcus arranged Kendrick Lamar's All Right, and he was like, how am I gonna find a rapper here who's capable of covering this song and who actually has time to work with me? And Eddie Moore gave him my number, right? So that freaked me out. I got over it. We did the Brass Bougie stuff. We opened for Jamaal. My bro Dom at this point in time had produced for a lot of major people. He called Marcus and I about playing on Jadena's album. Jadena's the first person that Janelle signed to Wonderland, if I'm not mistaken. And he's a star in his own right. I wouldn't say he's like A-list yet, but he's really close. He's doing music for Insecure. He's wildly famous. He just did a GQ cover, I think just like this last month or whatever. So I'm like, I have no business going and being in the studio to play trombone with this guy, where Marcus is also going, and Marcus actually has every right to be here, right? That's how I felt. But I think, so I get there, and I totally forgot. There's all these connections I knew about that I forgot, that I'll explain in a second. But Jadena's A&R, Steve Rhythm, who is A&R like J-Lo and like all these people, he was like, hey, you do this, like you do. Like walked in, one of the producers offered me French toast. I'm just shook. I'm like, I don't even know how to respond. He's like, hey bro, thanks for coming. You want some French toast? I just made some French toast. I'm like, bro, I'm terrified and I'm trying to make a good impression and be professional. And I literally walk in the building and you offer me French toast. And then Steve Rhythm's like, yo, I know all this about you because you know my cousin. His cousin moved to Denver, but owned a bar out here. And I jammed with him at some of Eddie's Fresh and Deaf events and had no idea that they were working together. And they were actually working to get like some of the placements that Dom was initially getting. So this dude and Jadena went to Stanford with MC Lars, who I literally do shows with. Like, and so I went from like, I don't deserve to be here to like, we were like a degree of separation this entire time. So I guess that story is more of I think a demonstration of how I kind of treat imposter syndrome is like, I personally think it's silly that artists try to beat imposter syndrome. I think like it makes sense that it exists. And you should just be comfortable with being uncomfortable and feeling inadequate and just letting that sit there and just working with it, honestly. I was gonna say around it, but just like work with it. Because I think honestly, it helps. Like I was really cocky in high school because I was like the best trombone player in the state of Alabama for like my class, you know? I had no reason or right to be that cocky, none. And I don't ever want to have that mind space or like, you know, I don't ever want to feel that way again. So I would rather be grounded in my fear of being inadequate and just work my ass off. That's kind of how. Yes, I think the opposite side of the oh my god I'm not worthy aspect of imposter syndrome is the fact that you are impacting people and you have to come to terms with that. I think that's part of why I don't think it makes sense to try to beat imposter syndrome. It's part of the process. It's there because while I may be freaking out because this person thinks I'm cool or likes my music or wants to work with me, there are people, and I've spent the last 2 years really trying to come to terms with this. There are people who are impacted by my art, who are impacted by my words. There are people, and this is like the entire NPC collective really. There's like, I don't think you can really dwell that much on like how much impact you're making versus trying to do more work. But there are people who are literally, who rap and like black and brown people who are rapping about anime and video games and whatnot, who were influenced by me, like where they felt empowered because they saw me perform, you know? There are people who shifted their entire views on like race in America because they thought that I was successful and I just told my story or talked about an experience or something, and they couldn't fathom the idea that would happen to me because they thought that this stuff only happened to people who were criminals or whatever and not like some structural deep bias. And that could be a post, that could be a song, it has been a song. There are people where I describe songs that I write and they tell me later that me talking about the song and then doing it, they're literally crying, right? So like, I have to think with the imposter syndrome situation that it's kind of a disservice to myself as an artist, but also to the people who are looking at me and really are impacted by my art and my words. it's a disservice for me to like allow something like that to dominate my process, because even though I'm not where I want to be, there's still a level where there's a ridiculous amount of impact that I'm making. And like I said, I'm really, it's been like the last year and a half, 2 years where like I've actually allowed myself to understand and internalize that that aside from the imposter syndrome, also kind of goes to the artist responsibility thing. Like you can't stop just because you feel like you're not supposed to be somewhere. Obviously, there's a reason you're there. You may have faked it till you made it to get there, but there's still a reason that you're there. And I just think there are levels to everything. There's got to be some kind of humility and awareness, but also an understanding and a willingness to accept. I don't know if you would say like your greatness or your impact, but I think that duality is fine. I think that duality is probably important. I'd like my lasting impact as an artist, as a musician, to really be around creating equitable social change, at least for Black communities where I've been, where I've lived, where I've worked, to come up and have the barriers towards our economic impact, our economic power, to have those barriers broken down. And I expect to be able to utilize the resources I get from my music and my work, and B, the connections that I make through it, to be able to work towards actually making that a reality. Because I do think that especially with the things that I have a propensity to write about, if people aren't able to clearly recognize that I impacted that when I'm done or when I'm gone, then I think I probably failed as an artist. So that's the ultimately I'd like it to be that. I'd also love to be able to be financially abundant from my art, but be able to walk down the street without being bombarded.